Hey all, I'm going to talk to you about the only opera we've seen here in St. Petersburg, which was Sadko, and we saw it a couple days ago at the Mariinsky Theater, which is the nicest theater I've ever been in my entire life. And we got seats on the floor, and you just look up and there's gold everywhere. It was stunning. And as soon as the opera started, you could tell that it was big, it was colorful, it was opera. And the next day in class, a lot of people talked about how they thought it was pretty mediocre and not all that great for a bunch of reasons. And I see exactly where they're coming from, but the last opera I saw was Yolanta back in Moscow, and that was really bad. So it's hard to be worse than that, so in that light I liked it better than Yolanta. In Yolanta, there was no storyline, there were no bad guys, and in the end everybody got what they wanted, and it didn't take that long to get there. Pretty boring. In Sadko, while there weren't bad guys per se, there were the merchants, which provided a source of, and they would antagonize Sadko a lot, which is about as much as a bad guy as you need for an opera. So other than that, the first thing that we noticed when they opened the curtains was the set. It was humongous. The first two scenes were very colorful and folky, depicting kind of folk life in Novgorod. Just really big, looked like they were painted by a peasant villager, but on paper. Kind of like almost Van Gogh-ish. Pretty cool. And what was cool about that was that the sets got more realistic as the opera progressed, which I thought was neat because as the story progressed, it got more and more unbelievable. So you had this kind of crossing of patterns here. You had the storyline getting more and more ridiculous, but the set's getting more and more realistic. Kind of a weird juxtaposition. But anyway, probably the most impressive scene that was in the entire opera was the underwater scene and the build-up to it. Because as soon as Sadko fell off or was thrown into the water off the boat, the lights went dark on the stage and the orchestra began to play this instrumental bit. And I thought this was really cool because it was almost as if they were playing it purposefully as a passage of time, like we were falling to the bottom of the seafloor with Sadko. It was pretty cool. They even had something fly. I don't know exactly what it was. There was a light on it. I thought initially it might be one of those fish that has the little light hanging on the front of them, but they definitely wanted to portray that you were with Sadko following him to the bottom of the sea, but you could breathe somehow. And that's about it as far as the scene goes, but then we get to the music. It was a lot better than Yolanta, but when I saw Yolanta, I hadn't heard Isaac's presentation in class that he gave on opera, so I feel more comfortable talking about it now. And especially the recitatives, which is the music that takes place when there's action going on, they were better than Yolanta, but they were still predictable at points. But then again, it's an opera, so it's all pretty predictable. But the thing that I thought worth noting about this were the arias. Some of them were beautiful, especially the one right after Sadko left his wife to go make the bet with the merchants. She sat there singing about how her heart was weak, and it was a really beautiful song. The only thing was that it was a really fluffy way of putting it. They had the translations up on screens for us, and they were pretty fluffy. But then again, I guess that's to be expected in certain genres of opera. But as the opera went on, the music got more and more repetitive, to the point where near the end of the story, the recitatives and the arias were just repeating what had happened throughout the entire opera, and it just dragged it out for about 45 minutes longer than it really needed to be. As far as presenting the music to us, there were a lot of problems. The singers were off key, for one, and there was a really big sonic imbalance in the auditorium itself. The orchestra was too loud because they didn't have a cover that came out and covered at least half of the orchestra. They were just fully exposed. So we heard all of that, and then the singers had to try and sing through them to us, which was really hard to do. And actually talking with Isaac afterwards, we kind of settled on the idea that the theater was not really designed with sonic perfection in mind. So there was a lot of imbalances there. A lot of the singers could not, I don't know their names, but a couple of the merchants had a really hard time projecting. That was a real problem. And at points there were so many people on the stage that trying to sing all at the same volume out towards the audience that the words really got muffled. I mean, I don't understand that much Russian, but I'm pretty sure if I did, it would be pretty muffled. I have no idea what they were singing. It all just kind of sounded like one groan mumble, probably because the orchestra was too loud. And other than that, yeah, I'm glad I got to see an opera at the Mariinsky. It was pretty nice. They also added some ballet aspects to the presentation of it, which was pretty cool. So you kind of got to see a little bit of ballet at the Mariinsky. Probably not something I'll get to do again pretty time soon. Glad I got to do it.